So, tomorrow is Sri Aurobindo's birthday, 15th of August, and it's with great joy that I feel we can connect to his thought, to his words, through so much beauty that is there in his poetry. So, this is our dog-eared copy of the collected poems. It's something that we go back to whenever we feel like reading something deep, beautiful, sweet, and easy to understand. Now, whenever we speak of Sri Aurobindo's poetry, we immediately think of Savitri, whereas in fact he has written a lot more, which is in various formats, various forms, various subjects. So, generally his poetry is divided into the short poems and the longer poems. And among the shorter poems, the more well-known ones are the sonnets. And among the longer poems we have Love and Death, Ilion, Chitrangada, so many other long poems which are long narrative poems with stories in them. But I've chosen to take the sonnets because it's a format that is very compact, and in a few lines, in a few words, Sri Aurobindo expresses something so deep and so true. And I say this because it's something very special. The sonnets are something very special because in these sonnets, Sri Aurobindo writes in the first person singular. He says I, and in every poem he expresses what he is going through, what his own sadhana is going through at that time, his own state of mind, his own state of being. And he speaks about himself, which is quite rare. In other writings we have his thought, his philosophy, his deep experiences. Sometimes it's extremely rational and we have to use our rational mind to understand that. But in these sonnets, he speaks of himself. And as we know, Sri Aurobindo doesn't write to create beautiful lines for the sake of beautiful lines. They are actually true words. They are not written for creating something beautiful for the sake of something beautiful. They are true words, true experiences, true states of being which are expressed in his very fine poetic language. As we all know, Sri Aurobindo's poetry is of the style of the Victorian style, the classical style, in respecting rhyme, rhythm, meter, and respecting these very strict rules laid out at the time for poetry. And particularly the sonnets, they are short poems composed of 14 lines, and the format that Sri Aurobindo uses is 3 stanzas of 4 lines and a rhyming couplet at the end, which sums up the whole poem. I have chosen 5 sonnets and 2 short poems. They are very short, really barely 8 lines. Now the 2 short poems were written when he was still in Baroda, and so the subject is a bit different and his expression is a bit different. But the sonnets were written in Pondicherry and between the years 1939 and 1945. Which were actually the war years. But still, we all know how deeply engaged he was on an occult plane, but still he had the time and the willingness, and perhaps you feel it was just coming out of him to write these poems which were expressing his own state of being. Now each poem, I'm going to read out first so that we first listen to the words and understand them in a global way, and then I will present them through dance movements which will help you to better again visualize those lines. So each of the poems I will first recite and then I will present it through dance. This has been a very, as we were growing up in the ashram, this was something that was frequently done to take Sri Aurobindo's poems and to express them through dance, because then you actually live every word. You express it through your own body. So you are compelled to understand it and to feel it deeply and in details. Sometimes when you read it, you understand it in a certain way, but then when you express it with your whole body, with movements, you go a little bit deeper into it. So I will begin with perhaps this is the shortest poem that Sri Aurobindo has written. It's called A Tree. A tree beside a sandy river beach holds up its topmost boughs, like fingers towards the skies they cannot reach, earthbound, heaven amorous. This is the soul of man, body and brain hungry for earth, our heavenly flight detain. It's a short poem which speaks of our human condition. There is something in us that wants to aspire, that wants to go high, but there is something in us that pulls us downwards, pulls us towards the material life, towards those things which are deep attachments to the material life. It's like a tree. He compares it to a tree which has deep roots into the earth, which hold it, and the branches which go up towards the skies. So his short poem, A Tree. A tree. A tree beside the sandy river beach holds up its topmost boughs, like fingers towards the skies they cannot reach, earthbound, heaven amorous. This is the soul of man, body and brain, hungry for earth, our heavenly flight detain. The next poem is God, quite simply. Here Sri Aurobindo speaks of God, who has come down into the very material world, and he is high above everything, but also he is deep inside everything. And it is by this fact that he has, by his compassion, come down into the earth as low as he can go, that we recognize that he is the divine. It is this quality of compassion that shows us that indeed he is God. First let me recite it and then I will show it. It's a short poem written in Baroda. God, thou who pervadest all the worlds below, yet sits above, master of all who work and rule and know, servant of love. Thou who disdainest not the worm to be, not even the clod. Therefore we know by that humility that thou art God. God, thou who pervadest all the worlds below, yet sits above, master of all who work and rule and know, servant of love. Thou who disdainest not the worm to be, nor even the clod. Therefore we know by that humility that thou art God. And now the sonnets. The first one is because thou art. Here he expresses how everything in the world he can now see is permeated with this beauty and bliss, which is the divine. The line is, because thou art all beauty and all bliss. So he can see beauty and bliss in everything, and the divine within that beauty and within that bliss. And it's his own he tells us that he can see in all beings and in all things and in everything in nature, how within everything he can see the divine. And he feels that, in fact, this thing, that beauty itself is the divine, is a form of divine. And joy is a form of divine. The bliss, the Satchidananda that we say, is itself a form of the divine. So, the poem is about how he sees beauty and bliss in the whole world, in everything. Because thou art all beauty and all bliss, my soul, blind and enamored, yearns for thee. It bears thy mystic touch in all that is, and thrills with the burden of that ecstasy. Behind all eyes, I meet thy secret gaze, and in each voice I hear thy magic tune. Thy sweetness haunts my heart through nature's ways. Nowhere it beats now from thy snare immune. It loves thy body in all living things. Thy joy is there in every leaf and stone. The moments bring thee on their fiery wings. Sight's endless artistry is thou alone. Time voyages with thee upon its prow, and all the future's passionate hope is thou. So we have 3 stanzas of 4 lines and a rhyming couplet at the end. And this poem and the next 3 poems are sonnets where he speaks in the first person singular, I. Because thou art all beauty and all bliss, my soul, blind and enamored, yearns for thee. It bears thy mystic touch in all that is, and thrills with the burden of that ecstasy. Behind all eyes, I meet thy secret gaze, and in each voice I hear thy magic tune. Thy sweetness haunts my heart through nature's ways. Nowhere it beats now from thy snare immune. It loves thy body in all living things. Thy joy is there in every leaf and stone. The moments bring thee on their fiery wings. Sight's endless artistry is thou alone. Time voyages with thee upon its prow, and all the future's passionate hope is thou. The next one is cosmic consciousness. Here again, this is another, I must tell you, there are actually 70 sonnets, 70 sonnets, all written in this form, where he speaks of his own feelings, his own thoughts, in this format, out of which I have chosen only 7, but in fact 10 times more. And most of them are written, some of them are undated, but most of them are written in that period of, it says 39 to 50, but actually from 35 to 1950, but actually it's 39 to 1945. So, cosmic consciousness. Here he speaks about how he has become one with the whole cosmos, with everything, this consciousness of feeling everything within himself. He talks of the vastness, this experience of vastness. And we know that these are not mere words, these are true experiences. He's giving us an idea of how his consciousness widens and includes everything. It's outside everything, and yet it's inside everything as well. And that is the beauty of this poem. And he has expressed it, this same idea, he has expressed it in many other sonnets as well. Within everything and outside of everything, and observing it as well. So, cosmic consciousness. I have wrapped the wide world in my wider self, and time and space my spirit seeing are. I am the god and demon and ghost and elf. I am the wind's speed and the blazing star. All nature is the nursling of my care. I am its struggle and its eternal rest. The world's joy thrilling runs through me. I bear the sorrow of millions in my lonely breast. I have learnt a close identity with all, yet am by nothing bound that I become. Carrying in me the universal's call, I mount to my imperishable home. I pass beyond life and time on measureless wings, yet still am one with born and unborn things. I have wrapped the wide world in my wider self, and time and space my spirit seeing are. I am the god and demon, ghost and elf. I am the wind's speed and the blazing star. All nature is the nursling of my care. I am its struggle and the eternal rest. The world's joy thrilling runs through me. I bear the sorrow of millions in my lonely breast. I have learnt a close identity with all, yet am by nothing bound that I become. Carrying in me the universal's call, I mount to my imperishable home. I pass beyond time and life on measureless wings, yet still am one with born and unborn things. The Golden Light. This is one of the very well-loved, well-known, I can almost say favorite poems of all the children growing up in the ashram school, because this was very often given to us to learn by heart, as it was very easy and simple. Because when we were learning poetry in the classes, very often Aurobindo poetry is very high, so at younger age we were given little poems starting with a tree beside a sandy river, which I think every single child who has passed through the school knows it. And this is because it's so simple and so small. And this, The Golden Light, also is a very well-known sonnet. And this is actually a very interesting poem because it speaks of the chakras, the various centers in the body, where he speaks of the golden light which descends first into the head, and then into the throat, and then to the heart, and then to the feet. Of course, there are many other chakras, but he speaks of these chakras, and of course, this is the format of sonnets, so you have 3 stanzas and a couplet. So he takes the 4 chakras, the 4 centers, where the divine light descends, and it brings light into that part of the being. So first the golden light comes down into the mind and the effect into the head, and the effect it has on his mind. And then it comes down into the throat, and that is the chakra of speech, and how his speech is then transformed. And then it comes down into the heart, and that's the center of feelings, emotions, and how all his emotions are touched by this, transformed by this light. And then it comes down into the feet, which, as we know, is the center of the subconscious. And there he says, and the earth, my earth is thy playfield. You have come down into the very material part of my being, even lower than that, and how that transforms the world. So, golden light. The golden light. Thy golden light came down into my brain, and the grey rooms of the mind sun-touched became. A bright reply to wisdom's occult plane, a calm illumination and a flame. Thy golden light came down into my throat, and all my speech is now a song divine. A paean song to thee, my only note. My words are drunk with the immortal's wine. Thy golden light came down into my heart, smiting my life with thy eternity. Now has it grown a temple where thou art, and all its passions point only towards thee. Thy golden light came down into my feet. My earth is now thy playfield and thy seat. The golden light. Thy golden light came down into my brain, and the grey rooms of mind sun-touched became. A bright reply to wisdom's occult plane, a calm illumination and a flame. Thy golden light came down into my throat, and all my speech is now a tune divine, a paean song of thee, my single note. My words are drunk with the immortal's wine. Thy golden light came down into my heart, smiting my life with thy eternity. Now has it grown a temple where thou art, and all its passions point towards only thee. Thy golden light came down into my feet. My earth is now thy playfield and thy seat. The next poem is The Bliss of Brahman. This is a very interesting poem because he speaks of the joy, the happiness that is now within him, which is when you identify yourself with the Brahman, with the divine. And each of the first 6 lines, this has a different format than the other. You have 8 lines and then 6 lines. So in the first 8 lines, in every line there is a synonym of joy, delight, bliss, ecstasy, felicity, and so on, happiness. Each line expresses a form of happiness and how he has become a part of this divine bliss. And in the last 6 lines, then he says how he is transformed by it. He's overcome, he's completely overcome by this, the glory and the beauty and the joy that is the divine. The spiritual life very often is seen as something devoid of joy, but actually he says the divine is all joy, all bliss, and once you reach that point, then you identify only with that happiness. It's an unbroken, undiminished joy. The bliss of Brahman. It's not the bliss of Brahman. I have become a foam white sea of bliss. I am a curling wave of God's delight, a shapeless flow of happy, passionate light, a whirlpool of the streams of paradise. I am a cup of his felicities, a thunder blast of his ecstasy's might, a fire of joy upon creation's height. I am his rapture's wonderful abyss. I am drunk with the glory of the Lord. I am vanquished by the beauty of the unborn. I have looked alive upon the Eternal's face. My mind is cloven by his radiant sword. My heart by his beatific touch is torn. My life is a meteor dust of his flaming grace. His grace is like a flaming meteor, and my life is just a dust in that. The bliss of Brahman. I have become a foam white sea of bliss. I am a curling wave of God's delight, a shapeless flow of happy, passionate light, a whirlpool of the streams of paradise. I am a cup of his felicities, a thunderblast of his golden ecstasy's might, a fire of joy upon creation's height. I am his rapture's wonderful abyss. I am drunken with the glory of the Lord. I am vanquished by the beauty of the unborn. I have looked alive upon the Eternal's face. My mind is cloven by his radiant sword. My heart by his beatific touch is torn. My life is a meteor dust of his flaming grace. With that, we come to the last sonnet, Surrender. This is again a poem which is very well known, and this is the only poem that I am presenting today, which I also presented last year. That was another selection of 7 poems, 7 sonnets, of which I have taken only this one for this year, because in the month of June we did a little workshop of poetry and we studied this poem. So I want to show those who had come on that day how this poem, which we tried to learn by heart, because when you learn a poem by heart, it goes really deep down inside you and you can recall it at will. The only thing is that the older you are, the more difficult it is to learn by heart. And what you have learnt as a child, you just cannot forget it. There are poems which I learned when I was 10. I can rattle it off without thinking because it's deep inside my heart, as they say, learn it by heart. In Indian languages, they say learn it by mouth, by throat. Mukhasta. It is in your mouth. You don't even have to think of it. It just comes out. And it's a mystery. How do we... Memory is really still not fully understood. But poetry, I have seen, when you have learnt it by heart, it just stays inside you, and at moments when it is needed, it just comes out, comes back to your mind. So I'm so grateful to all those teachers who asked us to learn poems by heart, because the moment we need it, it just comes back out of the back of the memory, it comes to the forefront, and you can eternally enjoy it. And that is the real wealth which you have inside your mind. It's just there. Now our memory is outside our body, it's outside our mind, it's somewhere else. We can't even remember a phone number if we want to. But when you learn poems by heart, they just go inside you and they stay inside your physical body, inside your mind. They are there. You can recall them whenever you want. So this is one of those very favorite poems that we have all learned by heart. And I have specially chosen this poem because, again, it shows, Aurobindo says that I have become an instrument of the Divine's work, and how the different parts of his being are part of the Divine's work. Very often he comes back to this theme in the sonnets: mind, life, body, the physical, mental, vital part of the beings which have their own work to be done. And in this he says how he has given up each part of his being for the Divine's work, for his different kinds of work. And he is only an instrument, completely surrendered to the Divine's work. So the title is Surrender. So let me first read it and then I'll tell you. O thou of whom I am the instrument, O secret spirit and nature housed in me, let all my mortal being now be blent in thy still glory of divinity. I have given my mind to be dug thy channel mind. I have given up my will to be thy will. Let nothing of myself be left behind. In our union, mystic and unutterable, my heart shall beat to the whirl beat of thy love. My body become thy engine for earth use. In my nerves and veins thy rapture streams shall move. My thoughts shall be hounds of light for thy power to lose. Keep only my soul to adore eternally, and meet thee in each form and soul of thee. And as I said, the poem is easier to remember because there is a music inside it. There is a rhythm which acts like pegs on which you catch the memory. Because we know that there are 10 syllables. So if we forget, we know there is something missing. There is a word missing because I have only got 8 syllables. There must be 2 more syllables. So when there is a music inside the poem, it's very much easier to remember it. So, surrender. Surrender. O thou of whom I am the instrument, O secret spirit and nature housed in me, let all my mortal being now be blent in thy still glory of divinity. I have given my mind to be dug thy channel mind. I have offered up my will to be thy will. Let nothing of myself be left behind. In our union, mystic and unutterable, my heart shall beat with the world beats of thy love, my body become thy engine for earth use. In my nerves and veins thy rapture's streams shall move, my thoughts shall be hounds of light for thy power to lose. Keep only my soul to adore eternally, and meet thee in each form and soul of thee.